She didn't know I was standing right outside the door when she laughed and said, "Once that house is legally mine, I'm dumping that pathetic man in front of everyone." So I let her walk straight into a family meeting. Her last one. "Hi everyone. My name is Ayan, I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I truly believed I had found the woman I would spend the rest of my life with. I'm not the most emotional guy in the world, but I'm steady, loyal, and I love hard. Maybe that's why what happened cut as deep as it did. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't even just manipulation. It was the realization that someone I trusted with my whole heart had been quietly planning to destroy everything I had built, while pretending to build a future with me. I grew up in a very humble family. My father was a mason, my mother a schoolteacher. We weren't wealthy, but we worked hard, saved harder, and respected our name. For 20 years, my dad built houses brick by brick, and when he finally passed away, he left me and my brother one property each. Mine was an old house on 2 acres of land. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, paid for with sweat, cracked hands, and years of sacrifice. I decided to renovate it. Pour my own time and money into it. Over the last 3 years, that house became my safe place. My pride. My symbol of finally feeling like I'd made something of myself. And she, Hania, walked straight into that pride like a dream. I met her at a mutual friend's engagement party. She was charismatic, bold, and she laughed like she owned the room. I was quiet, a little socially awkward, but she liked that about me, or so she said. She said I was refreshing, real, different from the show-off guys she usually met. I thought that was a compliment. Later, I realized it was a warning I ignored. We got close fast. Too fast, maybe. But when you're lonely and someone finally pays attention to you, you don't question it. You just breathe it in. I introduced her to my family. They adored her at first, my mother especially. She loved seeing me happy. She kept saying, "Ayan, this girl lights you up." To be fair, she did. At the beginning, Hania pushed me to be more confident, more social. She helped pick paint colors for the house, gave suggestions for the kitchen remodel, even convinced me to open up a joint account for future savings together. That should have been a red flag, but she never touched the money. I thought that meant she was genuine. But small things started feeling off. She always asked questions about the house title, who owned it, what paperwork was needed for renovations, whether inheritance laws could complicate things after marriage. I brushed it off, thinking she was just curious or planning ahead. Then came the engagement. I proposed in the living room I'd spent 6 months renovating. She cried, hugged me, said yes instantly. That night was one of the happiest of my life. But after the engagement, something about her shifted. She started complaining that the house didn't feel like hers. She wanted her name included on the property documents for security. She said it casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I said no, not because I didn't trust her, but because that house had sentimental value. My father built it with his bare hands. It was the only thing left of him that felt alive. She made me feel guilty for weeks. She said I was doubting her loyalty, her devotion, her intentions. But then she dropped it. Or at least I thought she had. Her behavior changed again. She stopped staying over. She stayed busy. She barely replied to messages. Family dinners she once called adorable became too much drama. Slowly, she untangled herself from my life while still pretending we were planning a wedding. But I'm not stupid. I felt the distance. The coldness. The shift. And still, I loved her enough to try. About 2 weeks before everything exploded, my mother insisted we host a big family meeting, just a simple gathering to finalize engagement rituals and discuss tentative wedding dates. Hania agreed too quickly, almost like she wanted it. But the day before that meeting, everything changed. Everything. I was fixing a loose cabinet hinge in Hania's apartment. She thought I had left. I walked out the door to grab my tool bag from the hall, and that's when I heard her phone ring. Her tone shifted, sweet, fake, dripping with arrogance. And then, the sentence that shattered every piece of trust one had ever given her. "Once that house is finally in my name, I'm dumping this pathetic man in front of everyone." I froze. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just empty. And in that emptiness, something inside me clicked. If she wanted a show, she was going to get one. I didn't move for a full minute after hearing those words. I just stood there in the hallway, my hand gripping the strap of my tool bag so hard my knuckles turned white. Her voice echoed in my head on a loop, "Pathetic man. My house. Dumping me." It wasn't even the betrayal that struck first. It was the sheer confidence. The boldness. The way she said it like it was some already written script she just had to finish performing. I took a slow step back toward the apartment door, staying hidden. I needed to hear more. Needed to know how deep this went. The voice on the other end was her cousin, someone she always pretended to barely tolerate, but vented to way more than she let on. I recognized the tone she used with him, cocky, comfortable, unfiltered. "Are you sure he's really gonna sign it over?" her cousin asked. Hania scoffed. "Of course. He's obsessed with me. I've been hinting that I feel insecure without my own assets. He's basically a puppy waiting for a treat." My stomach twisted. She continued, "His mom keeps asking when the papers will be finalized. She thinks I'm trying to protect my future. If only she knew the future I'm planning." They both laughed, an ugly mocking sound that made me want to put my fist through a wall. Instead, I listened. "The family meeting tomorrow is perfect," she said. "Once everything is in front of witnesses, he'll agree. And as soon as I get the title transferred, I'm done." "You're actually gonna dump him in front of them?" her cousin asked, sounding half shocked, half entertained. "Oh yeah," she replied without hesitation. "I want him to remember it. I want him to finally realize what league he belongs in." Heat flooded my face. My ears were ringing. I felt humiliation and rage battling inside me like fire and ice. But then she said something that shifted everything from anger to clarity. "Men like him are stepping stones. You use them until you're stable. Then you move on." Stepping stone. Puppy. Pathetic. And suddenly, every red flag I ignored started aligning like pieces of a puzzle I refused to solve earlier. Her sudden interest in renovation costs. Her constant questions about the property title. Her insistence on joint accounts she never touched. Her new distance after the engagement. The forced guilt when I didn't add her name to the deed. It wasn't insecurity. It was strategy. She never loved me. She loved my house. My stability. My willingness to bend over backward for her. I realized painfully that she'd studied me like a syllabus, learned my weaknesses, my emotions, my loyalty, then used them to plan her exit. But what got me wasn't even the manipulation. It was the disrespect. The arrogance of believing she could play me like a fool and walk away laughing. She didn't hang up. She kept going. "And the best part," she said, "is that his whole family thinks I'm some angel. Wait till I drop the bomb. Their faces will be priceless." My jaw clenched. Her cousin whistled. "You're cold." "Realistic," she replied proudly. "I'm not wasting my life with a mechanic who thinks a fresh coat of paint and a ring means he's some catch. I'm aiming for better." Mechanic. A word she always used sweetly before, calling me a hard-working man. Now it was a punchline. I had heard enough. I stepped away quietly, went down the stairwell, and walked out of her building without looking back. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because my heart was breaking, but because something inside me was rebuilding itself, stronger and colder than before. When I reached my car, I sat in silence. No tears. No shaking. Just a steady simmering rage that felt controlled. Calculated. For the first time, I understood why people in stories say their emotions switched off. Mine did too. I went home. My mother was cooking dinner and asked how Hania was. I hugged her silently and went to my room. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I replayed everything in my mind, step by step, building a timeline of her manipulation. And then, I thought about the family meeting. Her perfect setup. The stage she was so excited for. The moment she thought she'd humiliate me publicly. And that's when a thought slipped into my mind, slowly, dangerously. If she wanted a spectacle, I could give her one she'd remember for the rest of her life. But first, I needed to understand the full extent of her plan. The next morning, I returned to her apartment early. Not to confront her, no. I had a different goal. Information. Evidence. Confirmation. When she opened the door, she flashed her usual sweet smile, The one I now knew was fake. "You're early," she chirped. I smiled back. And for the first time, I realized just how easy it was to lie to someone who thinks you're too dumb to notice anything. The breaking point didn't hit me all at once. It was a slow burn that finally ignited into a wildfire the night before the family meeting. I sat in my room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about every word I'd overheard from Hania. Step by step, I replayed it, the laughter, the plans, the disdain in her voice. Every syllable etched itself into my brain like fire on stone. And with every replay, the warmth I'd once felt for her curdled into something darker, something sharp and unrelenting. I couldn't believe I'd ignored it for so long. The signs had been there from the beginning. The questions about the house title. The sudden obsession with paperwork. The pressure to protect her future under the guise of love. I had dismissed them, told myself she loved me, that she would never hurt me. But now I knew the truth. She hadn't loved me for a second. I had been nothing more than a stepping stone, a vehicle to secure her next move. The humiliation she planned, dumping me in front of my family, wasn't just hurtful, it was malicious. She wanted to weaponize the people who had raised me, the people who had shaped me, to make me feel small and worthless. That image, her standing there triumphant, my mother's eyes wide with shock, my father's memory twisted in the moment, kept looping in my mind. I could almost hear her laugh as she delivered her cruel little speech. And that laugh, it became the soundtrack of my anger. I realized I had two choices. I could crumble, swallow my pride, and let her orchestrate the moment she had dreamed of for weeks. Or, I could act. And I don't mean acting in a subtle way. I mean turning the entire table around, taking control of the narrative, and making her regret underestimating me for the rest of her life. It wasn't impulsive, it was clarity. Every fiber of my being, every thought of betrayal, every ounce of my love turned to rage, and that rage crystallized into resolve. I wasn't going to let her write this chapter in my life. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crushed, humiliated, or broken. No. If she wanted drama, if she wanted a spectacle, she would get one. But on my terms. I went over every detail I knew about her plan. The meeting was supposed to be formal, arranged at my parents' house, with my family and hers present. She assumed I would arrive unsuspecting, confident in the stability of our engagement, completely blind to her intentions. She assumed I trusted her blindly. She assumed I was pathetic. The nerve of that word alone, pathetic, still made my blood boil. I thought about the house title. I knew she had been pressuring me for weeks, talking about security and future stability, pretending it was about love when it was really about leverage. She had no idea that I had spent the last 2 weeks making sure everything was exactly as it should be. I had read through legal documents, verified signatures, and double-checked every contract, preparing not just for her manipulation, but for any contingency she might attempt. My mind raced, piecing together the trap she had set, and planning how to turn it back on her. And then there was the matter of my family. My mother had always been loving, trusting, and quick to see the best in people. She had already been charmed by Hania's performance, fooled by her act of sweetness and loyalty. My brother, my father's memory. They all trusted me, but they also trusted her. The potential for public humiliation was immense. The stakes were higher than I had ever faced in my life. I wasn't just defending myself, I was protecting my family's dignity and legacy from being weaponized against me. By the time I finally left my room that night, the decision had solidified. I wasn't going to beg, explain, or confront. I wasn't going to allow tears or pleas to sway the inevitable outcome. Instead, I would act with precision. Every word she had spoken against me, every plan she had whispered in confidence, every cruel intention, it would be met with a cold, calculated force of my own plan. I felt something I hadn't in months: control. And with that control came a quiet satisfaction, a promise to myself that she would not walk away unscathed. If she wanted to humiliate me, she would have to do it knowing she had underestimated the one person who had truly seen her for what she was, and was ready to strike back. I lay awake that night, replaying the meeting, imagining her face when the tables turned, imagining the shock, the disbelief, the chaos. And in that moment, the heartbreak became fuel. The betrayal became strategy. The anger became the blueprint for her downfall. Tomorrow, everything would change. The plan didn't come to me in a single burst of inspiration. It unfolded slowly, like a picture developing in the dark. The more I pieced together her intentions, the clearer my path became. If Hania wanted to use the family meeting as the grand stage for my humiliation, then that meeting would become the stage for hers. But not a petty outburst or a dramatic breakup, no. I wanted the truth to expose her, in her own words, without me ever needing to raise my voice. And I wanted witnesses. All of them. I knew confronting her early would only give her time to pivot, manipulate, or twist the story to make herself the victim. She was good at that. Too good. If I exposed her privately, she'd cry, apologize, blame her insecurities, and somehow wiggle her way back into being the wounded party. No. I needed her mask to fall exactly where she planned to drop mine, right in the middle of both families. So the first step was simple: play dumb. The next morning after overhearing her, I returned to her apartment early, acting like nothing had happened. She greeted me with that fake smile, kissed my cheek, and asked if I was ready for our big meeting tomorrow. I nodded, pretending to be excited, pretending to be nervous. And she loved it. She soaked in my supposed gullibility like it fed her ego. Every fake affectionate gesture she gave me only strengthened my resolve. The second step was preparation. That afternoon, I visited my cousin Hamza, who works in IT and security systems. I told him everything, not with emotion, but with cold, controlled clarity. He listened, his expression shifting from confusion to anger to disbelief. When I told him I needed help, he didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need," he said. "A recording," I replied. "Clear. Undeniable. Her voice, her words. I want to make sure when everyone hears the truth, there's no way she can twist it." He nodded. There were no speeches about morals or whether revenge was too far. He had seen me get used enough times in the past to know I was done playing the fool. Hamza set up a small voice recorder, professional grade, discreet, easy to hide. "Just slip it into her apartment or her car," he said. "Let her talk. She always talks." And he was right. People who are proud of their schemes can't resist bragging. That afternoon, I went back to Hania's place, offering to fix a loose switch. While she showered, I slid the recorder under the sofa cushion where she usually sat with her phone. It had a 12-hour battery and could pick up sound clearly within a 6-foot radius. I left without suspicion. That night, I picked up the device from her apartment under the pretense of returning a jacket. The moment I reached home, I played the recording. And it was worse, so much worse, than I expected. Her cousin wasn't the only person she'd told. She spoke to 2 of her friends about escaping the clutches of a small-minded mechanic, bragging about how she had manipulated my emotions, how gullible I was, and how the house would finally give her some status. But the worst part? Hania admitted she'd never loved me. "This relationship was always about potential," she said. "He's predictable. Boring. But he's stable. And stability is useful." Useful. She kept using that word like I wasn't a human being. Like I was a tool she could discard once the goal was achieved. I transferred the files to my phone, labeled and dated, and sent copies to Hamza for backup. My hands shook, not with sadness, but with anticipation. The third step was coordination. My mother, my brother, my uncles, they all trusted me, but I needed them present and calm. So the day before the meeting, I casually reminded everyone to arrive early. "It's important," I said, giving no details. My tone must have carried something heavier than I intended, because my mother squeezed my hand and promised they'd all be there. The fourth and final step was psychological. I needed Hania fully comfortable. Fully confident. I needed her walking into that meeting believing she was about to pull off the perfect performance. So I spent the entire evening texting her sweet messages. "Can't wait for tomorrow. I'm nervous but excited. Thank you for being patient with me. I know how much you care about our future." Every lie tasted like poison on my tongue, but she believed them. She responded with heart emojis, voice notes calling me my love, acting exactly like the devoted fiancée she wanted everyone else to see. When she sent me a final goodnight text, "Tomorrow will change everything, 2 hearts," I smiled. It would. Just not the way she thought. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Because now there was no fear. No confusion. No desperation. Just the plan. Complete. Precise. Unshakable. Tomorrow was Judgment Day. The morning of the family meeting, I woke up earlier than usual. There was a strange calm in me, A sense of inevitability. Hania, of course, had no idea what was coming. She was probably rehearsing the speech she thought would crush me, the triumphant look she imagined my family would give her. But she didn't know that for every step she planned, I had anticipated 2 moves ahead. When I arrived at my parents' house, my family was already bustling in preparation for the meeting. My mother hugged me tight, my brother gave me a knowing nod, and I felt their quiet support. They didn't know the full story yet, but they trusted me enough to know something serious was happening. Hania arrived next, dressed perfectly, with that fake smile plastered on her face. She greeted everyone warmly, kissed my mother's cheek, and immediately started chatting about wedding plans. Everything was normal, at least on the surface. She looked around the living room, glanced at me with a small smirk, and whispered, "Ready for your humiliation?" I nodded politely. "Of course. Can't wait." She laughed softly, thinking it was nervous banter. But it was calm. Controlled. Waiting. We all sat down at the long dining table. My father, who had passed away years ago, but whose presence felt alive through the house and our memories, was absent, but I felt his energy like a silent guardian. My mother looked at me, smiling, oblivious to what Hania had been plotting. My brother sat across from me, quietly observing. And then, I took the first step. "Before we get into wedding dates and the house paperwork," I said, "I think we need to discuss something important." Hania perked up immediately. She thought I was referring to a minor issue, maybe a last-minute detail about the house transfer. But what came next made her pause. I picked up my phone and pressed play. Her voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Once that house is finally in my name, I'm dumping this pathetic man in front of everyone. Men like him are stepping stones. I've never loved him. This relationship was always about potential. He's useful. Stability is useful." The room went silent. My mother froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. My brother's eyes widened. And Hania, her face drained of color. Her perfect composure shattered instantly. "No," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "This isn't." I held up my hand. "It is. Every word, every plan you had to humiliate me, captured and preserved. You didn't just plan to hurt me, you planned to hurt everyone who trusted you. And now everyone knows." Her cousin, who had laughed with her over the phone, had also been copied on the recording as backup. Every lie, every manipulative scheme, laid bare. Hania started to stammer, trying to salvage her image, to laugh it off, to convince everyone that it was a joke, a misunderstanding. But my mother, usually soft and forgiving, didn't flinch. She looked at Hania with quiet disbelief, then at me, and said, "Why would you plan something like this?" I didn't speak. The recording continued to play, her words echoing in the room. The smug confidence she had walked in with, the arrogance she thought would crush me, turned into her own undoing. Her expression was a mix of rage, fear, and humiliation, a mirror of what I would have felt if I hadn't prepared this moment. She tried to protest, tried to deny it, but there was no escape. Every defense she tried to raise fell flat because it was her own voice, her own plans, her own words that condemned her. The room, once filled with laughter and excitement, had turned into a courtroom. And she was the defendant. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. She had created the perfect trap for herself, and now she was caught. My family, who had been unaware until now, stared at her in stunned silence. The power she thought she had evaporated in the space of 10 seconds. I finally spoke, my voice calm but firm. "This house, this family, and my trust are not tools for anyone to use. And if someone believes they can manipulate us, they will be shown exactly what that costs them." Hania's shoulders slumped. The arrogance was gone. The smirk had vanished. In its place was the stark realization that she had miscalculated completely. The family meeting, which she thought would be her stage for victory, had become her moment of public exposure. And in that silence, I felt a sense of justice so intense it was almost physical. Not because I enjoyed her suffering, but because she had underestimated me, and now she had no choice but to face the consequences of her own actions. For the first time in months, I felt free. The silence after the recording ended felt heavier than any words could have been. It clung to the walls, wrapped around us, suffocating and undeniable. Hania didn't dare look at anyone, especially not me. Her hands trembled on the table, her chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. My mother was the first to speak. "Is this really how you felt about my son?" she asked softly, not angry, not confrontational, just heartbreakingly disappointed. Hania opened her mouth, closed it, then finally whispered, I didn't mean it like that." My brother cut her off. "You didn't mean what, exactly? Calling him pathetic? Saying you'd use him for the house? Bragging about dumping him in front of all of us?" His tone wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to make her flinch. She looked around the room, searching desperately for someone to latch onto, someone who might give her a lifeline. But everyone's face was the same, cold, stunned, betrayed. She finally looked at me. Her eyes softened instantly, turning into the watery, guilt-laced gaze she'd used whenever she wanted forgiveness. "Please, you weren't supposed to hear that. I was upset. I just said stupid things. You know me, you know my heart." I almost laughed. "I do. That's the problem." Her lip quivered. She stood up abruptly and reached for my arm. "We can talk about this privately. We don't need to drag everyone into it. Let's just step outside." I pulled my arm back. "No. You wanted an audience. Now you have one." Her face twisted, anger flickering beneath the mask. She wasn't sad, she was cornered. My mother spoke again, but this time her voice wasn't gentle. "You pretended to love him. You told us you wanted to build a life together. How could you expect us to forgive what we just heard?" Hania snapped. The act shattered completely. "Fine," she burst out. "Yes, I said those things. But it wasn't supposed to matter. I was emotional, insecure, and I needed to vent. Everyone vents. You people shouldn't be acting like saints." Everyone? No. She hadn't vented. She had strategized, planned, schemed. But she wasn't done. She pointed at me, her voice rising. "And you recorded me? Do you know how crazy that is? Normal people don't spy on their partners like that." I shrugged. Normal people don't manipulate their partners into signing away their house. Her mouth snapped shut. That was the real reason she was panicking. Without me, she had nothing. No house, no backup plan, no convenient safety net. Everything she built her future on had turned to dust in minutes. My uncle, who had remained silent until now, finally leaned back and said, "Young lady, you walked into a meeting planning to humiliate him in front of his family. Don't pretend you're the victim here." Hania glared at all of us, her breathing sharp. Then something inside her cracked. The anger left her face, replaced by raw desperation. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "I left my rental last month because I thought I'd be moving in with him permanently. Please. Let me explain. Let me fix this." My mother, bless her heart, hesitated. She always tried to see the good in people. But I shook my head gently. "No, Mom." She made her intentions clear. She doesn't need a home. She needs a new target. A tear rolled down Hania's cheek. For the first time, it looked real, not manipulative, not strategic. Real. But it didn't move me. Some lessons hurt, and this one was hers to carry. I walked to the front door and opened it. "Hania," I said quietly, "the engagement is over. You're not welcome here anymore." She stared at the doorway like it was a cliff. She didn't beg again. She didn't fight. She just walked out, shoulders trembling, wiping her cheeks aggressively like she couldn't believe what was happening. When the door finally clicked shut behind her, I felt something inside me loosen. Something that had been knotted for months. Relief. Not joy. Not triumph. Just freedom. I turned around. My mother walked straight toward me and pulled me into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." "I know," I said. "But now I do. That's enough." My brother came over and punched my shoulder lightly. "You handled it like a champ. Dad would have been proud." I swallowed hard. That meant more than he knew. We sat together afterward, not to dissect what happened, but just to be together. To breathe. To remind ourselves that family wasn't something that could be manipulated with sweetness or fake affection. By the time everyone left that evening, the house felt different, lighter, more peaceful. I slept better that night than I had in months. And as for Hania, word travels fast. Her family called mine within a day. Her friends started whispering. The cousin she bragged to? He confronted her himself. Her perfect image, shiny, polished, deceitfully flawless, began to crumble publicly. And all she had to blame was herself. Sitting in the quiet of my renovated living room that night, the house finally felt like mine again, not just because of the bricks and paint, but because of what had transpired. The air was heavier than usual, thick with a memory of betrayal, but also strangely light. Like a storm had passed, leaving the world strangely clean. I looked around at the furniture we had chosen together, at the photographs on the walls, at the spaces that held both my past and my present, and I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sorrow. Triumph because justice had been served without me ever losing my dignity, sorrow because the person I thought I loved had been capable of such calculated manipulation. I've learned something important from what happened. Life isn't fair. People can be cruel, selfish, and willing to use those who love them most as stepping stones to their own ambitions. Hania had all the charm, all the smiles, all the sweet words, but behind it was a calculated mind, a selfish heart, and a total disregard for the people she pretended to care about. And that is the part that cuts deeper than any betrayal, the fact that you can't always see the truth until it's staring you in the face. But I also learned the power of patience and composure. It would have been easy to confront her when I first heard her plan, to shout, scream, or throw her out in the moment. That might have felt satisfying at the time, but it wouldn't have delivered the full impact. By staying calm, gathering evidence, and allowing her to walk into her own trap, I turned the tables completely. The lesson was simple but profound. When someone underestimates you, never underestimate the power of preparation. Sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't loud, it's inevitable. I realized that the people who truly matter, the ones who will stand by you when the worst comes, are worth protecting more than any fleeting sense of anger or ego. My family, who had been blindsided by her deception, supported me unconditionally once the truth was revealed. Their trust, their love, their unwavering presence in that chaotic moment reinforced the foundation that Hania thought she could manipulate. Family is more than shared DNA, it's shared values, shared respect, and the willingness to protect one another even when confronted with betrayal. I also learned the importance of self-respect. Hania's manipulation was rooted in the assumption that I would let her treat me as a pawn, that I would bend under the weight of her schemes. I didn't. I valued myself enough to protect my dignity, to protect my property, and to protect my family from her deceit. That kind of respect, that kind of control over your own life and boundaries, is priceless. It's a quiet strength, but one that resonates louder than any shouted argument or dramatic confrontation ever could. And then there's the final truth that stings the most. Some people will never change. Hania didn't come to me seeking redemption, remorse, or forgiveness. She left, exposed, humiliated, and yet unrepentant, because that's who she was. Some people are temporary. Some people exist in your life only to teach you lessons, to test your patience, to reveal your own resilience. And some people, no matter how much you care, are simply incapable of love in any form that isn't transactional or self-serving. So here's what I want anyone listening or watching to take away. Betrayal isn't a reflection of your weakness. It's a reflection of someone else's selfishness. And while you can't control what others do, you can control your response. You can prepare, you can protect yourself, and you can ensure that anyone who tries to use you as a stepping stone finds themselves outmaneuvered in the end. Revenge isn't about cruelty, it's about justice, about clarity, about reclaiming your life from someone who thought they had the power to define your worth. Looking back now, I don't feel the need for anger anymore. I don't replay her laughter in my mind. I don't wonder what she's doing or how she feels. The truth has been spoken, the deception has been exposed, and the lesson has been learned. Hania walked out of my life, but she left behind a strengthened version of me, someone who will never again be fooled by charm masquerading as love, someone who knows their worth, and someone who understands the power of patience and strategy. In the end, life isn't about the people who betray you. It's about how you rise after their fall. And I rose. Stronger. Wiser. Unbroken. Because some lessons only come wrapped in fire, and some victories taste sweetest when they're quietly inevitable.